Hi, my name is Natalie Davidson, and this is the second assignment, The Anatomy of Melancholy. So, melancholy comes and goes, and it can creep up on you in any small occasion. And Burton brings up in his text many examples where melancholy can strike, such as in a moment of weakness or sadness, and in any state of mind that is not pleasurable. This melancholic disposition, that Burton calls it, can happen to anyone. In my own experience, melancholy, and as Burton explains it, can be a kind of dullness. Burton continues in this line of thought and defines it more as being lumpish, ill, disposed, solitary, or displeased. For me, I find it more closely related to being restless. That restlessness and feeling of being sluggish or dull comes together. And that is kind of melancholy for me anyways. So melancholy in its contextual, cultural, societal, and historical setting, and how it relates to mental illness. When Burton explored the topic of melancholy, the beliefs were different than they are today. For how, for example, medicine works. And people in the 19th century believed that the body and the mind, and soul and spirit were different entities, for example. Furthermore, they believed that these entities can be divided and that they had characteristics, such as being hot or cold, bitter or sweet, and can of course then cause melancholy. Society and the beliefs that exist also had a relationship to people with mental illness or melancholy. People believed in heaven or hell, and evil such as witches, devils, and so forth. And they were fearful and troubled by these beings. And they were also fearful of any wrongdoings, or even going out in the dark or by themselves, and believe that this can cause them danger or torment of some kind or to someone they love. The society was also built in such a way that any wrongdoing or any small crime that they committed could be severely punished in form of death or execution. Solitariness, which Burton brings up a lot, was also very common in the 19th century, especially for students, monks, and friars, and anybody else that works with religion, that they live more in isolation. These men, and they're also unable to marry, and this can of course then cause them suffering and mental illness and melancholy. So next then we have the melancholy in women. And I put a question mark there because the views of men and women were also very different at this time. And Burton brings up love of study in excess, love of women, which will require a just volume of itself. And these two things then could cause melancholy in men. Study to excess and the love of women. Burton focuses mainly on the man, or on men in his text, saying that the intelligent, studious man can suffer from melancholy and can even become mad of it or from it. For women, he talks about the monthly issue, the period then, that affect them and can cause melancholy. And this then he says the love of women that can cause melancholy in men. And he points to that these need more room in his texts to explain then the problem, if we'll call it, of women and their love. So how differently he sees women and his different approach to women in his text, explicitly and implicitly. So Hamlet for Burton. Burton might actually, I believe, enjoy Hamlet by William Shakespeare, because Shakespeare explores human emotion and troubles in his play. And even though Shakespeare writes about all kinds of emotions and human troubles, many of them negative, such as death, or loss, or sadness, but I believe that Burton can relate to these subjects, and maybe relate them to melancholy. And even Shakespeare's use of language might intrigue Burton, For example, when the protagonist Hamlet makes his soliloquy, to be or not to be, that is the question, in Act 3. Within this speech, it is clear that Hamlet is troubled and suffering and even contemplating death. In this, I think that Burton would make a connection, will make a link to Melancholy. Hamlet has also lost his father and is struck by sadness and grief, which again can cause melancholy then, according to Burton. And even again, how Shakespeare featured women in his play is similar to Burton's implicit view of women, that they are maybe inferior to men, and that the love of women can cause melancholy. Hamlet, for example, has a distrust of women, and he sees his mother and his once love interest Ophelia as disappointments and disgusting. Yeah, thank you for me.